First Christian concert that I remember was Nicole C. Mullen.
Yes.
And Matthew W. Smith.
Wait.
What's
Matthew W. Smith?
Michael W. Smith.
I was
my
like,
word.
to public
his
school.
Matthew
low-rent
West.
brother.
Matthew
It's
West.
like,
I don't even know.
We couldn't get Michael
Michael
W.
W.
Smith,
Smith.
but we did get Matthew.
If you like Michael W. Smith, you might like.
Thanks for pressing play on the On-Air, Off-Air podcast, where some of your favorite river DJs take some of the on-air conversations and have more of it off the air. So, introducing our panel, so to speak, today, I'm Josh from the River Morning Show.
I'm Hannah, also from the River Morning Show.
Jace from Afternoons.
Obadiah from Sunday Morning Renew.
There you go. There you go.
I for real couldn't remember.
that thing I do?
That's the
What's
worst.
that thing I do?
That's the worst.
He's so excited about his
No.
shit.
Okay, every Sunday, I actually have a little thing that I put out to remind myself because I don't have any trouble saying on the river, but I don't know why. There's this other station I listen to that has a show called Flow, and I haven't hosted it. I've never even heard it.
Yeah.
And yet, for some reason,
It trips you
when
up.
it's my turn to talk, I'm like, this is Flow on the river. No, it's not.
That's not the way.
And don't hit the table.
And
Sorry.
don't hit the table. All right, so we've worked all the kinks out. There's an exciting time happening here in Central Ohio, in the Columbus community, in the next couple of weeks, because it is a brand new concert called Riverfest. And it is celebrating the river's 50th birthday, so that's an exciting piece of it. But it's going to be an awesome night of worship and ministry with 6 amazing river artists. Shameless plug, grab your tickets at riverradio.com. We'd love to see you there, June 24th, Nationwide Arena. But it got me thinking, with this massive concert coming up in Central Ohio, we've all been to many concerts over our lives, and there are some epic stories, some amazing experiences that happen at those live shows. It's why people go to live shows again and again and again.
True.
So, best concert you've been to, or best experience at a show, most incredible, crazy thing. Like, you can go any number of ways with this.
Great.
But when you hear it, what pops to your mind and what happened?
Look,
I can't wait.
when you start talking about concerts and like memorable ones, you go back to your first.
Yeah.
The first time you remember a concert, because I don't know, I could have gone when I was 4. I don't recall that. But I'll share the concert that was my first Christian concert.
Okay.
And then also non-Christian.
Wow, the heathen life and the redeemed life.
I went to public school, okay?
Not a
So we
thing
know.
wrong with it, all right? Not a thing wrong with it.
First Christian concert that I remember was Nicole C. Mullen.
Yes.
And Matthew W. Smith.
Wait.
What's
Matthew W. Smith?
Michael W. Smith.
I was
my
like,
word.
She went to public
his
school.
Matthew
low-rent
West.
brother.
Matthew
It's
West.
like,
I don't even know.
We couldn't get Michael
Michael
W.
W.
Smith,
Smith.
but we did get Matthew.
If you like Michael W. Smith, you might like.
Go East, old man.
I don't know what just happened to my brain. Michael W. Smith, Nicole C. Mullen, and it was like the Redeemer tour maybe, but what was memorable is my parents at the time owned a Chick-fil-A.
Are they still your parents?
Why am I here? Get me out of here. This is what happens when you walk into a room full of guys.
Hannah, tell us your story. We're listening.
So my parents at the time that are still my parents owned a Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A was a sponsor at the concert.
Fun.
But they needed somebody to wear the Chick-fil-A cow onto stage.
No.
So my mom in front of, this is Nationwide,
Yeah.
at Nationwide Arena, is up there dancing in a Chick-fil-A cow suit.
But they don't know it's your mom.
And they don't know, but now I'm telling them, I'm outing myself, outing my mom. But that obviously leaves an impression, as now I will never think of like My Redeemer Lives and Chain Breaker, whatever songs the same way from Nicole C. Mullen. I just think of Chick-fil-A and start salivating.
Right.
The non-Christian concert was some good old Kelly Clarkson.
I thought it was going to be Matthew W. Smith.
With Clay Aiken.
Oh my God.
Was that Clay? Weren't they both? Was they both American Idol?
Yeah,
Was that like an
season
American
1
Idol
and
tour?
season 2 of
Oh my
American
gosh.
Idol, and
my
there was
gosh.
some good old Clay Aiken, and oh man, I was into it. I was thriving at that concert, and now
And was your mom dressed as a cow at
She
any
was
point?
there. She was not in a cow suit that
Okay,
time.
all right, okay.
But those will just forever be cemented
I
in
love
my
it.
brain as, wow, that's how your music history, how my introduction into the musical world started. It has not gotten better since. It really hasn't.
Who wants to go next? I'm looking at
Everyone's
Chase.
looking at me.
All right,
Clockwise, man.
It felt right.
Fine. Man, I could go so many different ways with this, but I think the one that stands out to me, this was like, you mentioned like first concert. This wasn't my first concert, but it was kind of like the first concert. It's like, oh yeah, I really want to go to this one.
Yeah.
So this would have been, gosh, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there.
Okay.
I don't even remember the name of the tour, but it was in Detroit. It was like Jars of Clay,
Ooh.
Switchfoot. I think Third Day was part of this tour.
Okay.
Smokes.
So what had happened was I had actually won a radio contest. Okay.
Did you now?
So I called into this
love
radio
it.
station and they said, hey, we want you to create some sort of wild instrument, record it for us. And if we like your submission, we're going to send you to this show. I said, cool. Okay, sure. So I turned, some old tin cans upside down and found some empty soda bottles and banged around on that. They're like, yeah, that was great.
Radio always comes up with the dumbest stuff to do. We're like,
Hey, now.
hey, real talk. I'm just telling you, you're looking for a contest. You're like, I know people will bang on stuff, and the thing we like the most, they can go to the concert.
Not only can they go to the concert, but we're going to send you on stage to play your stupid instrument.
No way.
So
Oh
in
my
like the
gosh.
encore, the encore is getting ready to come up, and they're like, yeah, you're going to put these tin cans, you're going to sticky tack them to the top of this cart, and you're going to go stand in the background
No.
while Third Day sings "I'll Fly Away."
No.
And you're going to do
back there
percussion with them. So I'm first of all, I'm prepping. That happened, and it's bizarre and wild. The part that I remember most, though, is not even being on stage. What I remember is trying to set up this stupid little instrument.
This rinky-dink
And I
idea.
remember John Foreman walking past and just staring at it like, what?
Yep.
And that is all that I remember about
Okay.
that.
Bands really do love radio contests during their sets.
geez.
So
They're
much.
huge
We hear that
fans.
all the time.
They're
We
huge
really
Is there a
fans.
video or photo proof of this anywhere?
There was at one time. I don't think it exists
It's been
anymore.
lost to
on.
the
I
archives.
will find it.
Yeah. Producer Eric is going to
I
find
want to
it.
see it.
About to make it unlisted. Private video.
That's amazing. Let's see. My first secular concert. You ready? Milli Vanilli.
Oh, mine.
Which was really just
No, it wasn't.
I know. It was a large gathering of people playing their CD. We all sat around and watched.
Wow.
So you don't know who that is.
No.
There was a huge controversy that they were a band in the 90s that were lip synced.
Oh.
So like they didn't sing their own music. So I went to a concert where their music was played and they danced around. But in
Sounds
fairness,
like a bop.
that was just foreshadowing for most modern music. You go to a concert where they're just playing a track and dancing
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of ideas for this. One was, I'm not going to say who it was. I met my favorite band of all time, and they were some of the rudest, meanest people I've ever met.
hate that.
Heartbreaking.
And they got back together, toured again like 10 years later. And I was like 15 years later, I'm like, surely they're nicer now. No, meaner, actually.
No way.
I was like, this is great. I'm trying so hard to still like your music.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
My fault. I know. So best concert, I think I had to think about it because I've seen a lot of shows,
Oh, yeah.
but 5 Iron Frenzy, mid to late 90s, early whatever ska band. They're still together.
ska.
Okay. Yeah. You don't know who they are. It's fine.
No.
But they did the Scalleluja tour in Columbus. Vets.
Hallelujah
Yeah.
tour. No. Okay. Continue.
Do you want to talk about your cow thing? Or are you just gonna? Because, like, just to be clear, that's not the dumbest thing that's been done so far.
Go ahead.
So they did the Scalleluja tour as the Insiders, the Supertones, somebody else, and 5 Iron Frenzy at Vets Memorial in Columbus.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know, right? So 5 Iron Frenzy did their entire show as a Star Trek episode.
What?
So they all came out
Only a
in
ska band
old,
could pull
in
this
old
off.
school Star Trek uniforms. And between songs, they took their songs and they made skits that surrounded their songs, and then it would flow into the next song.
I would pay money for that, actually.
Well,
that sounds like a great time.
That's the thing that I think is so great is that when most people think about concerts, they're like, I'm going to pay $300 to sit all the way in the back at this show and get my binoculars out, and they're probably not even singing. And then you go to like this little show, it was Vets, so it wasn't like little, but here's a kind of a smaller band at the time. They absolutely poured their hearts into, no pyrotechnics, no lights, no smoke machines, just costumes that they made and instruments that they played.
This is the best elementary class that happened with adults I've ever heard. It's just child stuff.
Incredible.
It's so great.
It was incredible. And I don't know how, but I got on their mailing list and they sent me a photo of all of them in their Star Trek uniforms. And I was like, it's kind of the best thing that's ever happened.
It's just downhill from there.
A win.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my life is never, you peak early and here we are.
So for me, I wish like that I had been at some really wild shows or something where that happened. And I don't have anything nearly what you guys have. Mine's much more sentimental because that's kind of the way I lean most of the time. So I'll try to make this long story short. Do you all know who Jim Elliott is? Not a musician. It's fine if you don't.
Why do I know nothing
He
today?
opened for Milli Vanilli.
No, he did not.
These people are.
That is so terrible. Jim Elliott was a missionary. Okay, so he and several other missionaries way back in the day, like black and white photos, went to try to evangelize an Indian tribe in Ecuador. Oh. They were like the most violent that we knew of at the time, and they made connections for a week, and then ended up giving their lives because these Indians, the tribe, thought because they took a photo that they were like stealing the souls. And so that was tragic. They had wives and young children. Later, the wives went back to reach this tribe of people and did evangelize them and taught them who Jesus is. And it's a miraculous story. Fast forward many, many, many years later, I'm listening to a Stephen Curtis Chapman song. And at the end of this song, I hear this voice come on a track, and it's in a foreign language, and it's just repeating over and over. And so I go to as I had the CD, so I go to the jacket, and I'm reading these words about follow the man maker, follow follow God. And it was the voice of that Indian man who killed one of those men. It was his voice. And at a concert, they had him there to do that song with Stephen Curtis Chapman. I'm getting chills now. Yeah. Because I'm just like, oh, this is so great. It's for this tour. I wonder how they're going to do it. Will they have a video of this guy? They had the guy. Yeah.
That's wild.
Literally speared and killed the missionaries who came to save him, whose wives and children went back to the men who killed their husbands and said, no, Jesus loves you that much. And to see him there on stage it just blew my mind.
They made a movie about that.
Yes. Beyond the Gates of Splendor. It was a book first, I think.
Yes, it was.
The End of the Spear as well.
You know what? I think the book is Beyond the Gates of Splendor. End of the Spear is the movie. Yes. So those are the titles.
And Stephen Curtis Chapman is an artist that sings songs.
Look, Josh and I have signed guitar picks from Stephen Curtis Chapman.
We sat next to him.
But you're not wrong to assume.
I'm only dealing with what I have learned in the last 10 minutes. That's all I got.
Gathered the correct information. And don't come to me for information.
Regardless of what experience you may have had at a concert, the hope with Riverfest is that you do experience God there, that you have a massively great time. Maybe something wild happens that you have a fantastic story to tell later on, but I hope that you will experience God there, and I know you will because of the artists and everything going into this. The question then arises, though, where does God show up in your life that maybe doesn't make the most sense, but he keeps showing up for you there? And I can go first because I know this is a little bit of an odd question. God always shows up for me when I'm mowing the yard. End of story. Next. No. So here's how.
He doesn't like your lines?
No. Well, it has to
do. You know I died for your sins, right? Those could be a little bit more crisp.
Yeah, that's right. Can we go straight, please? First of all, I have my wife, my dog, and 4 children. And so it's kind of the only time that I get to hear myself think. And so he'll be bringing up stuff that's been percolating kind of beneath the surface that's been drowned out by all life's noise. So that's kind of nice. but it is continually a lesson that he teaches me of when you put your eyes on something ahead of you and you keep your eyes on it, you will go straight to it. If you look around you while trying to make a straight line in the middle of a yard, you'll look back behind you when you're done, and it is a squiggly mess. You can't go from point A to point B in a straight way, the way God has intended, the straight, literal straight and narrow path, without focusing on him first. Mm-hmm. And I've used that lesson to teach my kids, A, how to make a stinking straight line in my yard, and B, how to follow God. Because it's important to know. It's the same thing with Peter when he was walking on the water. When he focused on Jesus, he was fine. He was on top of the water with God. Mm-hmm. When he looked around him and noticed everything going on, he sunk. And our lines aren't straight. So God continually, not just in those lessons, but in so much more, shows up when I'm using the push mower in my backyard. And I'm so appreciative of that because he understands, like, hey, he's got some time. I can break through right now. And he faithfully shows up for me while I'm mowing. So where does God show up for you that maybe isn't quite, third row pew in church every Sunday?
Man, I wish mine was more creative.
Well,
it's not.
It doesn't have to be. It's your story.
I want to be like, I have this one balcony that I sit out and the stars start shining. It's not that. It's what a lot of people experience. It's in the car, and this isn't a shameless radio plug.
Listening to the river? Download the app or listen to riverradio.com. Experience it live at Riverfest.
It's weird. Yeah, when I turn on 104.9 The River.
Great. This whole thing's a commercial. I didn't mean for it to be like that.
I know you didn't. But it's just the truth of the matter is when you're in your car, it's kind of like the mowing situation. You can really only focus forward and your mind isn't distracted by a billion and one things. So it's where like the most inner thoughts come to the front of my mind, whether a song inspired it or whether there is no music playing whatsoever. All of a sudden I'm either like thanking God, or truth be told, if you think I'm yelling at traffic, I'm actually probably yelling at God. It's where it's quiet and I'm talking out loud and people think I'm crazy as they drive by, but it's where I can voice my frustrations.
She's really getting into that song.
I know. Or they're like,
song.
They think that I'm yelling at them to get to the next lane or something. I'm like, no, I'm actually yelling up at the big guy. And it's a time where I feel like he's sitting in the passenger seat and just listening like a father and saying like, yell all you want. I'm still going to be standing here. And yeah, if the windows are down, I'm sorry. You get to be a part of my rant. You just get to be a part of it.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's the same for me as well. And I think most of it happens for me when I'm driving without radio on. So this one is not brought to you by Riverfest, but it is. And I think it's a combination of what you're saying too, where when you've got kids and a family, it's like, I can't hear myself think half the time.
It's so busy and loud.
So those drives out to see family in Dayton where it's just me. I'm like, this is nice. Yeah. I don't need a podcast. Though you should subscribe to this one.
You're undercutting everything Hannah built.
It's fine.
Right
it's
now.
all right. It's
no,
all right.
but it is. It gives you that space to really reflect. I think as a person, I think more broadly as a society, we're not good with silence.
No,
like
not
that's
at all.
It's a spiritual discipline for a reason, because it's really hard to not have 1,000 messages coming at you, and you have to make that choice. And for the reasons you said, when I'm driving, there's only so many things that are going on right now. I'm trying to go this way. And so it has that focus, but I think having that focus, but also your mind can wander a little bit at the same time. Something about that combination is just a really good mental space where I can feel so refreshed just by driving for an hour and giving myself the space and the silence to actually sit there and do that.
Nice.
Okay, I had two answers. The short one is film. I like watching movies.
Yeah.
I feel like God talks to me a lot through that kind of art. And I feel like if I told you the movies that I've really felt like God has talked to me through, you'd be like, you can't be in this room anymore. So I'm not going to tell you what they are.
I will defend you though, because truth and those important lessons are truth and important lessons, even if they come sometimes under a title that you wouldn't think.
Right.
That's the point. Where does God show up where you wouldn't think where he would? In the Alien movies, like whatever.
Well, it's one of those things, like it's not always about even that it's very like explicit, meaning, that they're stating it in like easy to understand terms. Sometimes it's a matter of like a shot's framed a certain way, a note hits a certain way, and like there's something that happens there. But the other thing I like to do is I just like to Now, nobody laugh but I like to lift weights.
Okay.
I deal with depression and anxiety a lot. It's all like I'm always dealing with it. Like it's always a thing. And so there's something about lifting a heavy weight, because you have to lift once you get to a place where it's heavy enough that it requires all that you are to move the weight. Like you have to focus on where your body has to be, how to do it. And it takes all that you are to move that thing. I can finally experience quiet. I feel like my mind is never quiet, but those are spaces where I get quiet. And I feel like that's a place where I'm able to, I've had God share very important things with me in that space where I've been able to finally get quiet and kind of listen to what God has to say. And it happens in the gym. So but that's definitely a thing for me.
I love how each of the circumstances are different, and they look specific because God knows how to reach each of us.
Absolutely.
He knows the language that he needs to speak to get our attention. And he is willing to do that. It's almost like I remember when we finally got pictures back from Pluto. Okay, I'm a sci-fi nerd, I'm a science guy, whatever. God will say it any way he can. There's a heart on that planet. Like the rocks are shaped like a heart on that thing. He will tell us any way possible how much he loves us by reaching us in any way. And for most of you, that probably isn't a way that you would have ever thought about that or cared. But for me, I'm like, oh my word. When Jesus spoke the universe into existence, he put a heart on Pluto for us to find it in 2016 because he knew we'd be looking. So it's just that way for me. We do hope, in all honesty, that you have encountered God here, that through some of this conversation, you've seen him reaching out to you at a concert, mowing the yard, or in traffic, watching film, or doing anything else you enjoy or even have to do. Thank you for listening here. Share this with a friend too, by the way, because they also need to know that God is right there in the midst of their everything going on. Thanks for listening to the On Air, Off Air podcast.
This podcast is a production of River Radio Ministries. You can find more podcasts like this one at riverradio.com. And if you like what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening now. And be sure to tell a friend so they can listen too.